First of all, good morning, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us here this morning. I want to take a minute to introduce our partners. Chair of our Police Foundation is Chief Maji, Director Paul Gregory from the Criminal Intelligence Service of Alberta, CISA. And although they're not able to join us right now, I really want to acknowledge the Millennium Insurance Corporation for their support in this project that you're going to hear about. Let's talk about catalytic converter crimes. Most people have no idea what a catalytic converter is until they're missing one. Quite simply, this is the part of your vehicle exhaust system that transforms toxic pollutants into less harmful gases. If yours was stolen, you might notice your car giving off choking fumes, making excessive loud noise, or dangling loose parts underneath. It's a crime of opportunity that takes place within a matter of minutes. It can take place on your driveway overnight, in a restaurant parking lot in broad daylight, or a fenced compound or parkade where numerous vehicles provide a target-rich environment to thieves. Catalytic converters are being stolen for spare parts. They're not being stolen for spare parts, but for the precious metals they contain, such as platinum, palladium, and rhodium, that can be recycled and sold. It's simply supply and demand, and it's worth a considerable amount of money. Well, the thief might only receive $200 for your catalytic converter from a scrap metal dealer. You might be out thousands of dollars for replacement and repairs, not to mention your insurance costs that can go up, car rentals that might have to take place, or time away from work. This is a multi-million-dollar problem that costs Edmontonians nearly $13 million a year. Just think about that, $13 million a year. For those that say this isn't important and doesn't need to be dealt with, I think they're missing the point. In 2021, there were 4,797 reported catalytic converter theft occurrences in Alberta, with 2,647 of them in Edmonton alone. In some of these occurrences, more than one catalytic converter may have been stolen. This is staggering that Edmonton accounts for 55%, just over half of all catalytic converter thefts in the province. In the first 6 months this year, theft occurrences in Edmonton have gone up from 1,445 in 2021 to 1,761 in 2022. And thefts in the city have continued to increase 219% over the last 3 years. Residents and businesses in the greater Edmonton area are getting hit hard by catalytic converter thefts, and we need to make it much harder for criminals to steal or sell them. This issue isn't new to law enforcement, but we're very grateful to be able to coordinate our efforts with CISA and other police agencies. But public education and police investigations are only part of the solution. We need a game changer to help stop the crime of opportunity. This is what the Community Solutions Accelerated Challenge is all about, providing the opportunity, incentives, and support for creative minds to help solve these ongoing problems. In 2020, the Edmonton Police Service and the Edmonton Police Foundation were the first to bring the accelerated approach to policing in the world to fight crime and improve community safety and well-being. We believe this same approach will help us find a sustainable solution to the ongoing problem of catalytic converter thefts. Now, just for a second, I just want to be clear on something. In 2020, we charged 107 people. In 2021, we charged 122 people. So far this year, we've charged 60. Many of these with multiple catalytic converters. It's possession of stolen property. They're out basically the next day. The criminal justice solution and catching people isn't the ultimate answer here. We need to look at something different. There's things that we've looked at and tried. You could etch your catalytic converter with a serial number. Not sure how that's going to stop somebody. The reality is they'll grind it off, or perhaps somebody takes that in trade because of the value of the property. We need to do we need to do more than just catch them. We need to stop them. How do you make these in front of you very hard to steal? Almost impossible to steal. Perhaps some point at some as the public and this becomes more and more public, perhaps the automakers may look at, why do we need such expensive particles or materials in these things? Can they be used in a different way? That obviously is not within our grasp today, but perhaps there's some bright young entrepreneur out there or entrepreneurs that can find a way that can reduce these things, just like we did in liquor store thefts and robberies in those 5 or 7 stores that we have going by 95%. 95% of $13 million is a lot of money, and it's a lot of people that are out a significant amount of inconvenience, and some that may not be able to afford some of the repairs that they need. So we believe this approach will help find a sustainable solution to the ongoing problem of catalytic converter thefts. And I'd like to ask our foundation chair, Chief Maji, to say a few words on behalf of this. Chief?
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Chief. So the Edmonton Police Foundation is honored to be participating and partnering with the Edmonton Police Service and with Millennium Insurance Corporation for this Catalytic Converter Theft Challenge. As the Chief mentioned, we had launched a challenge a couple of years ago now, I guess, with the liquor store theft challenge. And it was the same type of predicament in the sense that we had tried a whole bunch of things, nothing was seeming to work. And so we launched the accelerator, threw the challenge out there to the world. We had over 200 entries from over 20 countries that applied. Even institutions like MIT, grads from there had applied. And we ended up with a solution that came right from our backyard, from the McEwen Social Institute, and that solution worked. We're thinking of using the exact same approach. We're going to launch it on a platform called HeroX, which is a global platform for innovators. Some of the world's most craziest challenges have been solved through that platform, again, through innovators. We believe that when you bring in entrepreneurs who think very differently and creatively and aren't really in the business, we'll come up with a very different idea. And it could be short-term solutions, long-term solutions, could involve technology, could not, we don't know. So we're leaving it open. It's a $50,000 prize. That's really not why these innovators will be doing it, because if you think about it, once the solution works and you've got your first customer in Edmonton, guess what? This is a problem not just in Edmonton, it's across. And so they can sell that solution around the world. They'll have a proven area where people will say, this actually, assuming it works, this actually worked, and this is what it did. So that's what's in it for them. Just make sure I don't miss any of my notes here. In terms of how the innovators will be picked, we've got a process right now on the HeroX platform. The URL can be shared with you. At the end of November is when the deadline closes. And so after that, we'll have a panel of judges, industry experts, innovators, entrepreneurs that will look at the solutions to see how viable it is. What is the reality of that solution being deployed, and will it work? And then we'll do a pilot to make sure that it actually works and see what the results are. After that, we'll make the award, and it could be one or multiple entries that win it. $50,000, again, is a fair bit of money to start the incentive, but again, it's about commercialization of that solution. I think that's all I have today. I'll pass it back to Chief. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And as mentioned earlier, we're extremely grateful to our foundation and the work that they do on behalf of Edmontonians and behalf of the Edmonton Police Service. So thank you, Chief, and thanks, Alicia, the Executive Director, who's here with us today. And certainly we just open it to some questions. Certainly myself and Chief, but Paul Gregory is the Director, as we said, of Criminal Intelligence Service Alberta here as well. So if you have any questions, feel free. Well, I think it's been there, but it's certainly got worse in the last few years, and I'm telling you just as you do. And I mean, obviously, this is associated to many other problems that we have, just like liquor stores. It's cash, right? So connected to the drug trade, perhaps connected a little bit to the organized component as well. So it needs a different solution, because right now it's a fairly significant cash source for those individuals with a very low risk of being caught and a very low risk of any penalty of being held accountable. So when you have those three things in place, it's a recipe for escalation.
I'm not too sure if it's possible to answer this too, but is it one of those things where it kind of catches on among?
100%. It's if you're successful, and I mean, I can tell you about one project that we literally caught an individual with hundreds of them. So it's fairly well organized. It's something that's easy to transport. You might not see it show up in perhaps the scrap metal dealers in Edmonton, but it's not very hard to take it to another city in our province to move that product. And Paul could probably talk a little bit more on that. But 100% it's a crime of opportunity, which the best success on that is actually take the opportunity away.
Does this problem require multi-jurisdictional, federal way of looking at this? If you can drive it to BC or Saskatchewan and sell it?
Well, it does if what you're trying to do is hold somebody accountable to it, right? Which, as you heard me say, we've had several people held accountable to not a lot of extent. So I think what we're focused on here today is taking away the opportunity. What's out there to make these things, let's say, next to impossible to steal? Not saying that anything is going to be impossible to steal or to take because of the value, but certainly there's something out there that can be done to take away the crime of opportunity, which is the value of them and how quickly they can do it. I mean, if it takes longer to do because you have something that's been invented, it's a better chance of getting caught. So I think what it will, if successful, you'll see this expand right across Western Canada, to your point, because, I mean, I can tell you, talking to other chiefs in major cities across North America, it's a huge problem, and it's more problem in certain areas. And certainly, if you look at some of the drug problems that perhaps we have in Edmonton, and you put the connection to them, there's certainly some synergies or similarities that you can put together.
You talked about the fact that this can happen literally anywhere, but is there an area you're seeing or that is more problematic?
It's happened everywhere here. We've had parking lots hit, we've had businesses hit, compounds hit. It's more, and then we've had, certain areas where we've ran projects and caught people that have maybe worked in a significant area of the city. So that's a lot of investigative hours, a lot of police personnel. As I said, unfortunately, when it goes to court, let's use the example, and it's just possession of stolen property. Well, all of you are reporting how people are walking away from serious aggravated assaults, and sometimes even more serious than that, and they get out the next day. So you can imagine what possession of stolen property is. It's something that we need to find a different solution and not just rely on the criminal justice system. Doesn't mean we're going to stop looking for people and catching people and trying to hold them accountable, but it also needs a different approach.
About etching serial numbers on the
Yeah.
catalytic converters, have there been any other efforts made to try and deter this?
Just basically trying to put the word of mouth out, obviously to keep an eye on your vehicle, and also a significant amount of police resources in investigating some of the thefts that have actually happened, trying to obviously take out those, let's call them major players that actually move high quantity of this stuff, and we've had some success in enforcement, but again, the penalties aren't really going to deter people because they're not that significant. And I mean, we're seeing that all over the criminal justice system. It's not always legislation and law that's going to solve this. It's taking away the opportunity that gets some bigger gains.
Are you surprised it's gotten to this? When you first heard about maybe one who's going missing to today, are you like, really, are we dealing with this?
As a police officer, you always wonder why. But when you actually look into it and have it explained to you that the rhodium and how expensive it is to buy that stuff, and it's a lucrative market, whether it's for organized crime, whether it's for businesses or illegitimate businesses to profit, it's lucrative. So when you see that and you tie trends of crime, it generally is. It's cash, really. It's just another form of cash. And if you're trying to support a habit, a drug habit, if you're trying to increase your business volume, if you're trying to make money, it's one of those things that have just expanded through the prices go up. These things become more valuable. And as we saw, precious metals prices in the last few years have went through the charts.
Are you seeing specific vehicles targeted?
Well, I can tell you what last year looked like. 1,449 SUVs, 756 trucks, 359 cars, 330 vans, 101 motorhomes, and 96 buses. So I think they just, wherever there's an opportunity and maybe a less risky chance of getting caught, perhaps, and easy to do, that's where the crime goes.
It doesn't sound like you're really talking about blaming scrap metal dealers in this. It sounds like this is a situation that they also don't really have a lot of control over.
Well,
Or is that?
I'd be careful on that, because anybody that's taking these and somebody comes in with one of these things cut off, there's probably a pretty good chance that maybe you might process that. So we still do investigations on scrap metal dealers, and there has been, and Paul could probably talk about the active investigations, not in detail, but it's something that we obviously pay attention to, because we're by law or by legislation, they basically have to have a recording process. So we want to ensure those legitimate businesses are following, what it is to stay legitimate. So it's always something we'll continue to monitor and continue to look at. But what we're saying is that's not the be all end all. And I mean, even them changes in legislation that we've had, I don't think the impact has been very big, because the value of the property is more significant.
Sorry, you didn't want to go into specifics. Is there one vehicle that has a catalytic converter, or a group of vehicles that have catalytic converters that have much more, or a significant amount more precious metals in them than others?
Paul,
There are, okay.
do you want to come here, Paul? Yeah.
Not to dissuade people from buying them, I guess they're going to be luxurious.
There are, and I don't have the specifics in relation to what vehicles those are, but that is a lot of the reason as to why some of these vehicles are targeted, is because some vehicles do have, in relation to the catalytics, you can see there's lots of different types of catalytics here. Some vehicles have up to 3 catalytic converters inside one vehicle.
What type of vehicle?
I don't have those specific numbers for you, but I can just say that a lot of people, I think, do target specific vehicles because they know they will get more money for that vehicle when they take it into a scrap metal dealer, because it has more rhodium, palladium, or platinum inside it. And just to dovetail on the chief's comments there as well, rhodium, again, to speak to some of the increases that we're seeing again with that 219%, rhodium 5 years ago was trading at about $1,000 an ounce. It's at $14,000 an ounce right now. So again, I think it just goes to show you how lucrative that industry is.
And I got here really late, but was it touched on, and is this a component in all of this? The extraction process is laborious. Has it gotten easier, and you expect it to get easier, as all technologies do? And will that play a role in whether or not more of these are stolen?
I think at the end of the day, it probably would. I mean, again, it all comes back down to supply and demand, right? If the process becomes easier for them to extract these metals, you're going to see more demand for it. So the scrap metal dealers themselves don't necessarily extract the metals. It gets sent out to refineries and areas that actually look after that.
But I'm asking if you've seen the process become less laborious over the years, the extraction process, or is that not something?
That's not something that we necessarily track, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
That wouldn't be a component in supply demand?
Potentially, for sure, down the road, I think. But again, we have to focus on hardening the market from what we can do as police, and that's something that's outside of our realm.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
And I think to that point that's exactly why we're here today, to make it harder to steal. So right now, the reality is if you have a Sawzall and you go in there, you can do it in a very short period of time. So it isn't that hard to do right now.
Is there a message you have for the public? I mean, is there anything we can do to?
Well, I mean, I guess park and lit areas, it's all the crime prevention stuff, right? Obviously your vehicle, if you have a garage, in the garage, if you don't, then somewhere that is monitored. That said, that's all after the fact, right? Because somebody wants it bad enough, it's going to be a matter of catching video and trying to find out who actually did it. The message is here is we have to find a new way to keep our folks from the inconvenience and the significant amount of time and money that we're losing in this city. And really, it's across this province, but it's every province. And to think that the answer is always going to be to throw another project team on it, to spend considerable amount of hours to catch somebody with 200 catalytic converters, to see very minimal effect on that because of the justice system and the priorities of the justice system. So I think it's we got to continue to be diligent on catching the people that are doing it. We have to obviously focus on those that are more organized and have ties to other things, which is just like the liquor store thefts and robberies. But the other piece to that is just be aware of where your vehicle is and you know, try to put it in probably as more of a lit place than you can. But other than that, it's back to being aware of your surroundings and who's in your neighborhood. If somebody doesn't belong, then certainly call police. Okay, thanks folks. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.